For over half a century, humans have endeavored to make business a force for good. But is the movement working? Or is it time to explore a new path forward? Welcome to Less Talk, More Action. We are your hosts, Joel Caesar and Owen Barrett, experts in clean energy, net zero real estate, decarbonization, and entrepreneurship. In each episode, we ask provocative questions and share stories from the front lines of sustainability with leaders in science, tech, and business taking real action to design a cleaner, better future. Thanks for joining the conversation. Now, let's get to work. Welcome to Less Talk, More Action podcast. My name is Joel Caesar, the world's undisputed voice of building decarbonization. Joining me as always is Owen Barrett, the self-proclaimed Adam Newman of Green Building. Today's guest was Aaron Tartakovsky, the co-founder and CEO of Epic Cleantec, a trailblazing water technology company that's redefining how we think about water in our buildings and cities. Aaron was a delightful guest, the kind of guest we love here on the show. He's an entrepreneur. He's got a really indirect, kind of unique path to what he works on today, which is trying to eliminate the waste and inefficiencies of our buildings and cities, not reusing the water that they could, especially in San Francisco and across California's water scarce regions. He's super knowledgeable. He's built a hardware product in this world of climate tech that's hard to get funding for, hard to deploy, highly regulated. And he's found his way through all those challenges to build a great company that's growing and doing super innovative, interesting things, which we can't wait to share more with our audience. But before we get into all that, let's dive into this week's segment we're calling Owen and Joel Go Back to California. So, title is referencing you and I. We're recording this the week of July 14th. We're both heading to the IMN ESG and Decarbonizing Real Estate Forum in Dana Point, California. Beautiful location. I think we got some surfing in the works. So you and I back to our happy place on the California coast. But the bit we're going to do here is a game where we've taken shots at conferences and panels before, and we're not the only ones who are like, why is this all we ever do is meet up at some hotel and sit in the same panels and have the same people talk about the same crap in the same echo chamber? And how is this actually advancing us as an industry? So we can sit here and complain, but let's make a game out of it. So what we're going to do is I'm going to ask you pick one of the sessions for the 2 days, all very cool, relevant titles to our industry and what we're trying to do in ESG and decarbonizing real estate. And you're going to say, okay, here's what the title is. Here's what they'll probably talk about. But here's what I wish they talked about. Like, what would be the real talk of this conversation if people could kind of let their guard down and not be so buttoned up representing their big Fortune 500 company. Sound good?
Yeah, it sounds good.
All right, you want to go first?
Yeah, so I'm going to pick one. It's called Behind the Scenes, How GP-LP Engagement Drives Decarb. And I wanted to pick this one because of a particular meeting that I was a part of a couple weeks ago where I got on a call with the GP who I have a great relationship with. They pulled in their equity. It was some, private equity group. And I've never talked to a more climate denying individual in my entire life. And I mean, it was shocking. And when I was on the call, I was obviously leading with financials first, economics first, who cares about climate, who cares about the environment? Let's do this so we can all make money. And this guy was just going wild with anti-climate believing things. And so my beef with it was that the GP sat on the call silent, didn't say anything, didn't defend why we should do solar, didn't defend how it's going to make the overall project more money. And so I think in this session, you're going to hear a lot about how GPs and LPs have to work together so that they can come find, an agreeable place to have a nice investment thesis. Fuck that. If you're the GP and you have a serious take on ESG, you got to take that attitude to your LPs and say, we're making decarb part of our business plan. You're either in this deal with it or you're not in the deal. And, that's easy for me to say when we were raising small checks from family offices. Probably harder when you're dealing with like sovereign wealth fund of Saudi Arabia. But we can't have LPs driving the whether or not decarbonization happens. That's like, it doesn't make any sense from my perspective. And I know that's It's hard to say from the sidelines, but I think it's really important.
Well, you're on the sidelines now, but as you were just referencing, you and I were GPs. We tried to start a thing, and we were
It was hard.
we were trying to raise every cent we could from every type of LP we could. And I think, if someone was on a call with us being like, look, I don't give a shit about your solar value add strategy. Is this going to make us money or not? You and I weren't going to push back on, wait a second, solar matters and climate matters. We would have been like, yeah, sure. Where's the money?
Well, maybe, but maybe not. I mean, had we had someone write a check that said, I'll write this check, but you can't do any decarbonization, we would have said, thanks, but no thanks. Because we did have, I will acknowledge that we wanted to go net zero and we couldn't because of our LPs. But we still did more than the entire industry is doing today. And that was 5 years ago. So I think even as a little company, we were pushing back on LPs, different scales, obviously. But
yeah, you're right.
Let's just talk about like what's important and where do we go from here? We can't let LPs kind of call the shots, I don't think.
Well, I don't want to go too deep into the rabbit hole in yours because we're going to go to mine. But actually, while we're on this one, it strikes me too as well. So many times as you and I are maybe complaining about GRESB or reporting, and then you ask someone like, "Why do you really have to do it?" Well, the investors need it. The big pension funds or the European money, the investor. Like this is quotations for people listening. Like, who are these LPs that are like, if you don't have a great GRESB score, like, so that you care enough that you're going to like make them have a high GRESB score, but you don't care enough to like dig into, is this actually having an impact, or is it possible my demands for reporting are actually leading to less action? So it's like, that's the conversation I would love to have in this session. Like, who are these LPs? Well, there's someone from CalSTRS here. I mean, maybe I'll go into this session and ask her, like, what?
Yeah, put the question, but you enter in the question that's going to get the whole room to go silent.
Yeah, I'm gonna sign my name as Owen Barrett asking the question. All right. I'll quickly go to mine. So I'm looking at one that's called Decarbonization Strategies for Tenant-Controlled Buildings. So this is my wheelhouse from my Google days. I mean, Google owned a lot of buildings, but we also were the only tenant in a lot of our buildings around the world, where I, as the net zero lead for the company's real estate portfolio, went into that very naively thinking, oh, we got a ton of leverage. We're Google. Like, we're running this building. The landlord's going to do whatever we ask. And it's like, I quickly got stymied by our transaction team, the people that were dealing with the landlords, the people that were trying to negotiate terms for us and always making sure we had the right leverage. Like this fantasy land that like, oh, just sign some green leases and everyone will get on the same page. It's like, it's the part of a conference like this that I think is going to be lacking. You're going to go to this session and that word will be used 4 times, right? Well, let's take a shot every time someone says green lease in this session. And it's like, what is a green lease? Are people actually signing them? Is there any teeth to them? Like, we used to do these leases, again, I thought a ton of leverage for us, right? We're probably the most desirable tenant in the world. And we still couldn't get like concrete language between us and the landlord. Like, if you don't help us achieve this scope 1 emission reduction by the time our renewal comes up, then we are going to leave, or we're going to get some kind of discount. Like asking for like, and like our lawyers and our transaction people like looked at me like I was nuts. Like, we're not doing that. So it's just like, I think one of those panels where you're going to get a lot of pat each other on the back. Oh, you should have seen this one green lease I signed where they signed up to maybe do something I thought they should do if we maybe did something else. It's like, none of that's ever going to happen. So there'll be like very little real talk in this session.
I agree. I think there's a lot of, again, I feel like we talk a lot about how our industry has to get out of its own silo and start like talking to the other departments within their organizations. I feel like a lot of times ESG departments celebrates when they sign a green lease, or they like roll out a green lease in their apartment buildings. That's it. It's like, okay, let's not actually measure what kind of projects we did because of the green leases. Let's just celebrate the fact that we're using them and put that in our ESG report.
It's so true. Both of these examples we just took were, I think, lessons you and I have learned the hard way in our career, which is coming in, maybe being too naive. I'm not saying we were when we were Z&E Capital as a GP, but still like being welcomed very harshly to the GP-LP relationship if you don't show up with the right I guess terminology in that scenario. And in this scenario I'm talking about here with tenants and lease negotiations and landlords, like you think you're in some sustainability fantasy land and you have leverage as a major tenant, but like, you don't. Everyone's always holding their cards in these big time real estate landlord lease transactions.
We always go too long on these bits, but talking about these green leases, I would love to talk to someone because, I hear about them all the time. And when we were at Z&E, we just forced tenants. You're just gonna pay for the solar lease. There's no question as to whether or not you want to. And I would like to understand within the multifamily industry, who decided that the green aspects of, the decarbonization aspects of a property are like up to a tenant, or if we care about how the tenants think about it, because that is not what happens with parking fees. That is not what happens with pet rent. That is not what happens with concierge garbage. These owners are forcing tenants to pay for these things. And then when it comes to decarbonization, everyone's like, oh, wait a minute. We need to make sure that our tenants are on board with these projects.
Yeah, it's so true.
Where did that come from?
And it's like acting like the tenant's gonna care. I mean, how many multifamily leases did I sign in my life where I was just like, oh great, I can live here? Where's the lease? I never read a sentence of that lease.
Yeah. You're gonna go through the 40 pages and push back.
Actually, I'm gonna move down the street because you guys have a decarb. I gotta disclose how much energy I'm using. Nah, I'm out of here.
I'm not signing up for that. Come on. Oh God, just drives me crazy.
All right. Well, as you said,
but let's be optimistic. There's a great conference. You should go if you're in the industry. I would say this is one of the better ones.
Yep.
Yes, like all the everything is not perfect, but it's a lot better than a lot of the other conferences that we've been to.
Yep. And Cambio, my company, will be sponsoring a surf outing.
Oh my God, dude. Give me a break with the plugs.
Well, I'm just saying there's no room left, so no one listening to this will be able to attend. But just shows like you come to this conference, you can go surfing. Like it's kind of a nice perk.
We always reference All In Pod. You know how Jason is constantly plugging all of his startups and other guys give him shit.
Yeah.
You are Jason.
You're calling me back out because I've been calling you out. You're the one who abuses this. All right, let's wrap this up. That was fun. Let's enjoy the conference. Don't embarrass yourself out there at the happy hours. And now let's dive into our conversation with Aaron Tartakovsky. Joining us today is Aaron Tartakovsky, the co-founder and CEO of Epic Cleantec, a trailblazing water technology company that's redefining how we think about water in our buildings and cities. Aaron's work focuses on decentralized water reuse, helping buildings turn wastewater into a valuable on-site resource that saves water, reduces energy use, and builds resilience for the future. With a background that spans public policy, environmental engineering, and entrepreneurship, Aaron is passionate about driving change at the intersection of sustainability, innovation, and the built environment. Under his leadership, Epic Cleantec has become a recognized leader in on-site water reuse systems, winning numerous awards and collaborating with developers, policymakers, and industry leaders to scale water reuse as a critical climate solution. So, Aaron, welcome to Less Talk, More Action.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Well, we like to get right to work. Something I know you also like to do. We start our guests with the same question. How are you taking action to make the world a better place?
Every morning when I wake up and see a flurry of emails coming in, I'm taking action in one form or another. But no, I mean, look, I've spent almost a third of my life now building this company from a startup in a garage where two of us were mixing dog waste in a food processor to see if we could convert wastewater solids into a usable fertilizer, to today we're the fastest growing company in this space, running systems and projects like Salesforce Tower, the largest in-building water recycling system of its kind. So all I do is take action to try and solve this tricky issue that is water. How's that for an answer?
Taking action with dog shit and a food processor, that's pretty good. We'll take that.
Startup in a garage. I feel like, man, this is a start to a good podcast or a good movie plot here.
Not only that, we're in our second garage, by the way. We started in one garage. Our office is now in an old Honda dealership. We're just basically in a bigger garage. So we're like the ultimate garage company.
It's good to stick to your culture.
I love it.
Yeah.
Aaron, Joel and I met in grad school, man, like I think 12 years ago. Longer. I don't know, 12 years ago. And since then, I've spent, my professional career in the energy space. So why why is water important? Why should I care about it? I know it is, but I just have not lived in that world. So why is this such a big deal?
Yeah, no, I mean, look, what you're seizing upon is kind of a reality industry wide that water is often kind of the ignored cousin in the wider climate discussion, but ultimately there is no anything without water. I mean, I think we talk a lot about the water energy nexus in the work that I do, but everything needs water. The semiconductors that we need to produce the technologies that we use that we're chatting on right now require water. The new electric vehicles that we're producing require water for manufacturing. The data centers, I mean, the average data center uses about the same water as a 50,000 person city. Not to mention, in a state like California, about 20% of our electricity goes to water and to wastewater, whether that's through its treatment, its transmission. I mean, the fact that we in California pump water from Northern California over mountains against gravity down to Southern California is kind of nuts if you think about it. But water is not talked about enough, and there's a lot of reasons for it. But you can't have anything else without water. It's such a critical resource. And I think why do we not talk about it as much is because it's largely worked well. It's
been cheap too, right?
It's super cheap, and that's one of the reasons why we don't talk about it as much. But also, a lot of our systems have worked well. Generally, when you turn on your tap, water is going to come out. And when you flush your toilet or turn off your shower, wastewater is going to go away. But that status quo is no longer sustainable for a lot of different reasons. But we're running out of water in certain parts of the country. In other parts of the country, like New York, we've all seen the videos of the subways flooding every time it rains a lot. So we have wastewater capacity issues. Every single sort of area of the water sector that you look at, we've kind of swept it under the rug for so long that everything is now coming up to the surface. And that's why our company exists, is because water has not gotten the right amount of attention, but that needs to change to make sure our cities are livable.
Aaron, you came on my radar years ago when I was working in Santa Monica, Southern California city, Mediterranean climate, water scarce region, a city really known for innovating and investing in their infrastructure to be future proofed. Unlike a lot of cities in California, I think we can agree can do a lot more. Yep. I know you do a lot of work in San Francisco, and we'll talk about that. But what also struck me about that experience, Santa Monica is its own water department. So when they, we were trying to do this very innovative building water project. We use composting toilets. We were treating rainwater inside. It's a science project of a building. I think we're probably ahead of where you guys were. We probably should have talked to you back then. But all that to be said, I just grew this incredible appreciation for the regulatory infrastructure of cities in California and the state of California. I think I often can rail on government and over-regulation as a challenge to climate tech deployment, especially in California. And that project in Santa Monica showed me that as well. It was hard to do a project that was going to save a lot of water, which sounds crazy in a place that's water scarce. But it's a long way to tee you up, I guess, to say, while this is a space that needs innovation and we want to learn all about what you're doing with your product, I think we can also, like you just said, appreciate the level of rigor that this country and our states put on water quality and ensuring that it gets to where it's supposed to be?
Yeah. And look, I'm with you. I mean, I think we as a company operate in a highly regulated space in two industries: water, wastewater, super highly regulated, and real estate. And those regulations were put in place for a very simple reason, which is to protect the public, to protect public health. So that being said, I mean, we as a company, we kind of take kind of the anti-Uber approach, which was, if Uber's approach was to basically steamroll the regulators, which is what happened here in San Francisco. When the regulators tried to stop Uber had this groundswell of public support behind them that just flooded the offices of all of our elected officials and said, we want this, we need this, and then they just kind of backed off. We can't do that, nor do we want to. I mean, we work really closely with our water and wastewater utilities, with our public health agencies, with our building inspection agencies. And they all want to be innovative. They want to do the right things. They want to move things forward. But because they are protecting public health, they are always going to be more risk averse. when you're dealing with water, this is not an app where you can just launch it on the app store, and then if there's bugs, you pump out an app update and, fixed. You kind of have to get it right. I mean, obviously there's going to be some growing pains and you're going to try new things, but I would say the regulatory folks in this state are great. Can we do more? Absolutely.
So when you look at my simplistic view of this is buildings are wasting water.
Yeah.
Maybe is there a one size fits all approach that you guys take for most buildings, or is it a nuanced sort of depends on the building, depends on the location, depends on the technology that's already in there? Like, how complicated is the solution that you guys are working on?
Well, we say the word depends.
We dove right in. Why don't you tell us what Epic Cleantech does here? Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of it depends answers in what we do, and I'll talk about why. But very simply, what we do is we put water recycling systems into large buildings, and you touched on it already, but in the year 2025, it's kind of crazy that we use pristine drinking water from our national parks to flush our toilets in downtown San Francisco or LA.
Anywhere,
or New York.
right?
Yeah.
Isn't that like that's the status quo? There's exceptions,
scarce
but
places.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
that's
look, water,
crazy.
we recycle so many things, but water is this use it once and then kind of get rid of it mentality.
Yeah.
And because we've conditioned society to think that way, and again, we put waste in the name. We call it wastewater. We've been conditioned to think that, it's dirty, we have to get rid of it. And again, for good measure. I mean, there's a reason why we built sewer systems, because otherwise, in the olden days, people were just throwing slop buckets out on the streets and people were getting sick. I mean, we know that, and that's why these systems were put in place. But we have technologies available to us today to take any water in the world, whether it's shower water, toilet water, oil fracking water. We can take that and turn it into whatever we want. I started this company with my father. So my father is a building engineer, but before he was a building engineer, he was a Soviet rocket engineer. So got his training in the Soviet aerospace program. And, as he often says in his very thickly accented English, which I'm not going to do to spare him, but he often says, like, what do you think the astronauts have been drinking for decades? Like, we have technologies to do this.
Yeah.
And I think I feel about water the same way I feel about all climate technologies, which is like we have all these technologies available. It's just about deploying them. We got to get them out there. So at Epic, we are going into large buildings or group of buildings. We're taking all this wastewater, treating it to exceptionally high standards to actually drinking water qualities, and then we recycle it for non-drinking uses today. So we're using it to provide recycled water to flush toilets, for irrigation, for cooling towers, for laundry, which if you add all those up, in a multifamily building, about 50% of the water needs can be supplied with recycled water. In an office building, that can go up to 95%. So I mentioned Salesforce Tower in San Francisco, 60 stories. We're recycling 30,000 gallons per day. That is 76% of all the building's wastewater that we are capturing, treating, and reusing. And sort of put differently, in a state like California, where we go from drought to drought to drought, Salesforce Tower is drawing in 76% less clean, pristine drinking water from the city's supply, and by just recycling its own water on site. So it's taking a lot of strain off of the rest of the sort of municipal supply. So that's kind of a quick overview. And then the last thing I'll say is, we're big advocates of this whole notion of resource recovery, that wastewater is not waste. It is clean water, as we're obviously talking about, but we produce two additional outputs, which is soil. So we're actually stripping all the organics, the food waste, the human waste, all these other things, turning it into soil products, which is something we developed out of work with the Gates Foundation. And then we also produce energy. So we use a huge amount of energy to heat water up in a building for showers, for laundry, for dishwashers. So when you're walking on the streets on a cold day and you just see steam coming up through the sewers, that's just energy. I mean, we did the calculations. There's so much thermal energy in our sewers that were we to recapture that, we could power every electric vehicle on the road. So we are actually recovering that energy, reusing it in the building. So we're taking building wastewater, producing clean water, producing soil, and producing recovered wastewater heat energy.
Joel, stop me if I go too far down this wormhole here, but
All right, this is your last warning. Go ahead.
all right. I get fat. I like learn about all these new things on this podcast. I get so interested about the mechanics of how this stuff actually
I knew you were going to
works.
like this one. This is
Yeah,
the
I'm a
best.
big fan right now.
Yeah.
I mean, when I think about a building or a house, anything, it seems like it's plumbed so that water comes in, water goes to all the different fixtures, and then it goes out. So if you guys are cleaning the water or purifying it, whatever the terminology is, do you have to replumb a whole building so that water is only going to toilets? You do, and
Yeah.
so that's where a lot of the cost comes in.
Yeah, and so and what you just laid out is part of the reason why new construction often makes the most sense, because you can design it in from the beginning. However, we are seeing actually a lot of opportunity for retrofits, not necessarily like in a home, but if there's a building that has a large cooling tower, you can basically you can route the wastewater into the system, treat it, and that's just one single point of connection back to the cooling tower. Same with outdoor irrigation, a golf course, or food and beverage manufacturers. Taking all of that wastewater that a dairy is producing, you can capture that water, treat it, and then reuse it for all sorts of different functions in the building. And one thing I'll say, which I hope is a lesson that your listeners take away from today, is that when you're distributing recycled water, you use what are called purple pipes. And that is the international symbol for recycled water. It's more of a lavender, if you ask me, but we call them purple pipes. So if you're walking in any sort of major city, or especially around parks, especially sort of on the West Coast, you'll notice signs that often say like reclaim water, don't drink. Those are always purple. The pipes are always purple. So now if you see a purple pipe, you know that there's lovely recycled water flowing through it.
I like
Well, there's a million things I want to ask Aaron. I left Santa Monica in 2019, and I went up to Google, and I started working on some water reuse stuff at Google, because Google's a leader in the same realm as Santa Monica. But then I got kind of moved into climate and decarb, and been doing that since. So it's been a while since I've been like in the water reuse world, as I was so deeply for a few years there in Santa Monica. And, we built this net zero water project, like you said, commercial office, 40,000 square feet, and that building produces more water than it uses from the municipality. We inject purified water into the aquifer that's going to help that city for generations. And it's like, you see that and you start to say, well, we can do this. Why isn't every building that's built like this? But of course it was very challenging. We were fortunate we were the city, so navigating the regulatory frameworks with the state and the county and our own building safety department was not simple. We had the advantage of being a city staff. So I guess if you can tell me where has this world gone since? Has this gotten easier? Are we streamlining some of this regulation?
We're definitely getting better. So Joel, you may have left the water reuse world, and we miss you every single day, but things are getting better. And so my background's actually in federal politics, and that's a big part of what we work on as a company is, again, we have the technologies. That's often not the biggest challenge. It's about getting around often kind of tricky regulatory barriers. And it's not because people don't want to do it. It's just like they've never done it before. For 250 years, we've designed water and wastewater the exact same way, which, as Owen said, it comes into the building, it leaves the building, and we never had to deal with what happens when you want to treat that water actually inside of the building. And so all the regulations are written around the conventional way of doing things. And I think in many ways to think about what we are doing is what rooftop solar and distributed energy, whether it's wind or hydro, what they did for the energy world and shift away from a sole reliance on just big, mega centralized infrastructure towards a more distributed approach, we are doing for water and wastewater. We're just 20 years behind the energy industry. And so a lot of what we work on is changing those regulations. So San Francisco is the epicenter. San Francisco, every new large building over 100,000 square feet has to have an on-site water recycling system. That is now law. There's about, I think, 30 projects right now up and running that have an on-site reuse system, another 40 in development. And what San Francisco did was they created a framework that brought together the Department of Public Health, the Water Wastewater Utility, and the Department of Building Inspection. They all came together and said, okay, how do we agree upon a framework that allows these things to be designed, engineered, installed, and then operated into perpetuity in a safe way? And so that is now in effect. It's been distilled down to a 10-step checklist that playbook is now being copy pasted to more cities, more states, and more countries. I mean, we hosted over 100 delegations just at Epic Cleantech alone last year. And a lot of those were foreign delegations from Asia, from Europe, from the Middle East, showing them how we do this. And so, San Francisco was the first, but Austin, Texas has now a mandatory program. New York City has a cool grant program. Arizona, Oregon, Washington all have programs, Colorado as well. And so we're starting to see the shift. And I think super important is like, we don't see ourselves as a replacement for the need for centralized infrastructure. And by the way, I don't think the solar folks see themselves as a replacement for centralized energy production. It's about creating more resilient systems where you have centralized and decentralized working together, so that if there's a shock to the system and ever, one of them goes out, the other ones, people understand when you talk about investments, you diversify your investment portfolio to make things more resilient so they can weather bad times. We're doing the exact same thing by diversifying the water supply portfolio. And I'm going to stop talking as you get me excited when I start talking about water infrastructure, and then here we are.
I can see Owen's going to jump in, but let me just clarify too, like San Francisco, the leadership there, being the first mover on a policy or a consortium, a framework like this, it's a progressive place trying to do the best for water, for resource management, but it's also their combined sewer stormwater system that has challenges when it rains a lot. So it's driven by this, which maybe is like this segue to, oh, great, you can do this in California where it's water scarce, or maybe in other places, Vegas, Phoenix, and you mentioned international. But why would anyone in these water-rich areas like New York do it? But New York also has combined stormwater sewer, right?
Yeah. So again, big drivers of why people want to do this is, one is water scarcity. So you're creating security and resilience for your own project. But the second is wastewater capacity. A lot of times we have sewer pipes that are as old as this country, and they just can't deal with more flows coming into them. There was a construction project in Philadelphia where they were digging out a section of the sewer main in that city, and they found that a part of it was not actual pipe. It was literally a hollowed out tree trunk from like 212 years ago that was serving as pipe for a major part of Philadelphia. And that's kind of you want to get a snapshot of the state of a lot of our infrastructure in this country. That's it. But I think a really important thing just to mention, because I think it's super important for us and for all climate technologies, especially in this political landscape, is you mentioned San Francisco is progressive and we kind of do these things, which is all true. But for us to be successful, as well as for any climate technology, no one's going to work with us out of altruism. No one's going to work with us just because it feels nice and it's good for the environment. The only reason why people work with us, whether it's water scarcity or wastewater capacity, is because we save them a shit ton of money. And that's what it has to be. To be able to build a scalable solution that is better than the alternative, which is tapping into the city water and tapping into the city sewer, we have to bring value to this project, but we also need to have a compelling payback. So progressive or not, we have projects now in parts of Texas that are not Austin, where people are doing this just because it makes sense for the bottom line. And I think candidly, if someone wants to work with us and they think climate change is a hoax and all that stuff is bullshit, that's fine. They're just going to do this because it makes sense for their business.
Sometimes, and I'm sure Owen will jump in here, sometimes they're the better customers.
Yeah, I feel like they don't get tripped up as much on the details of like, well, is this the perfect thing that I should be doing? It's like, it makes sense, the numbers work, like let's get moving. I have two questions that I want to ask, but I guess the first one that I'll ask, if you take a new,
and we got to make sure you give him time for the beer and whiskey. So
we got to get to the beer and whiskey. I know, I shouldn't even ask this question. We should just jump to that.
No, go ahead.
If you take a new this seems so obvious, right? And I feel like this is sort of the theme, Joel, that we have on our podcast. We bring in implementers of clean technology, and it seems so obvious that the question is, why isn't this happening at scale faster? If you take a new construction project, it sounds like it's easier. Is the bigger holdup economics? It sounds like it's not. The bigger holdup is regulation. Is that fair?
It depends, and this is why I said at the outset we have a lot of it depends. So we're working now on a planned 40-story project in Florida, and it would be the first of its kind ever, a new office building. They want to basically set a lot of new records, including be a net zero water building. And there, the challenge is regulations. Just because the regulators have never done anything like this, and we're asking them to kind of go out of their comfort zone. But again, we're very good at that, just kind of hand-holding them, doing the anti-Uber or the opposite of the Uber approach of working really closely with regulators. In other markets, it's price. I would say if there's one single thing, though, it is cost. It's because the system itself generally is not going to be it's not going to be a deal breaker, but oftentimes it's the distribution. It's all that extra purple pipe. So it's the reason why we are initially focused on larger projects or projects in areas that have high water and wastewater rates, because we want to make sure that we can get that sub 10-year payback. And it's something you said at the outset, the water is just super cheap. Part of the reason why there's so much stuff going on in energy beyond sort of the sort of overarching decarbonization goals that we all have is that if you leave on all your appliances and you leave on your lights, you're going to see the impacts of that on your utility bill. And what we've found is that one of the best determinants of people changing their behavior is if you hit them in the wallet. That gets people to change their behavior real quick. Water doesn't operate the same way because water is super cheap. It's subsidized, and people are not as incentivized to change their behavior.
You mentioned you're a policy guy. I'm sure you think a lot about this. And I'm sure this answer is going to be nuanced, but is water too cheap?
Yes. Yes.
It wasn't so nuanced. That's an easy answer.
Well, there's reasons cities and states keep it cheap. There's the income barriers. There's it's a right in America, if I'm saying that correctly. So,
but the converse of that is if it costs more, that would be a forcing function for a lot of the technologies to get better. So as an example, I'm part of something called the Epic is part of something called the 50-liter home coalition. So, it's us, but it's largely comprised of companies like IKEA and Kohler and Procter & Gamble and some of sort of the biggest names out there. And the goal of this is to get every individual home to 50 liters or 13 gallons per day. Right now, kind of on average, we're way above that. But what we found is that by replacing fixtures, by using new laundry pods that don't require hot water, all these sort of interesting things we can do. We just finished up a pilot in LA where even people already conserving water reduced their water use by 20%. And if water cost more, those technologies would be basically accelerated because people would be looking for every single way to save water. So I agree with you that water should be cheap because it's a basic human right. I agree with that. But I think it's so cheap, we don't actually pay for the water, really. We're just paying for its treatment and its transmission. And it's made water conservation a harder argument just because people aren't so pushed to do it.
See, Owen, it's nuanced. I'm always one making sure we're staying grounded and ensuring we're giving basic human rights
Joel always wants
people.
to look out for the low-income individuals, and I just want to do the shit that's going to have impact faster. No, but it's a good point. In California, everybody likes to talk shit about how expensive electricity is, but I think California is in the 10 lowest states of average residential electricity bill per month because the high price has driven efficiency. But how do you get there? That's the question. You can't. That's a hard one to answer. But I don't think anybody cares about that. We want to hear about the beer and the whiskey.
All right. So let me tee Aaron up here. Years ago, green build, San Francisco. You all, Epic Cleantech, had one of the better green build parties I've ever been to. I forget the location. You'll tell me. It was this kind of inside outside. It was this cool art everywhere. But the star of the show was the free beer was being offered as a byproduct, maybe I'm not saying that right, of some of your projects' treated water. I'm not going to say wastewater either. So you say this better, but I know there's some exciting things you're doing with your byproducts.
Yeah. So look, I think a recurring theme, and when you've heard me speak, is that there's not a huge amount of understanding about how water systems work. How does the water actually get to our taps? What does water treatment look like? And again, it's been designed to be very much out of sight, out of mind. When we put a system into a building, even when we're working with the most sophisticated real estate developers and owners in the world, a lot of them have the same reaction to wastewater as my 7-year-old niece. it's yucky, gross, well, like all the other things that you would expect. The actual industry term in the water industry is the yuck factor. There's just a mental block when you come to talking about this stuff. So what we found is that water passes through our system. I have all the lab data showing that this is pristine, better than drinking water quality. And still, people are really reticent about it. So if I put a glass of that pristine treated water in front of someone, they won't touch it. If I take those exact same drops of water and put it into the form of a beer on a nice sleek can, they're 90% more likely to drink it. And so we said, all right, let's make a beer. So we have an installation with Related in San Francisco, a 40-story apartment building, 550 apartments. We're operating this gray water system. And what we did was we actually did just that. We produced 7,000 beers, which we unveiled at Greenbuild in 2022. And it was kind of a hit. I mean, it became this like very weird viral sensation, not viral in like a virus kind of way, but like on the internet. In this industry, that was wrong choice of words. My marketing team's gonna be like, Aaron, can you not?
You might need to maybe lean into that. It's okay.
Yeah, but like I mean, we ended up, there was like 5 articles on the beer every week for 6 months. It clocked up 3.5 billion media impressions. It was on every news channel at one point. I was drinking beer on live TV, and it was actually named one of Time Magazine's best inventions of the year. Again, we didn't make a single penny because it was not for sale, it was not commercial, but its goal was to show people how robust these technologies are, that we're not just telling you it's clean, that we are drinking it, that we're having fun drinking it, that we're serving it and over-serving it to Joel at Greenbuild parties. He was super inappropriate. He tried to get on stage.
It made me feel funny. What is that what it was supposed to do?
No, that was just you, Joel. But
it's a habit when you have 7.
Was it not supposed to have 10 or 7?
Nah. Yeah, he set a new limit. But at
South, now you're going to whiskey?
Yeah, so at South by Southwest, we were like, all right, we've done the beer thing. People kind of know, like, all right, Epic Cleantec, recycled water beer, cool. We're like, all right, well, let's do something different. Because, by the way, a bunch of other companies started making beer after us, which is great. I mean, like, we love to see it.
Out of recycled water specifically?
Yeah. And again, we were not the first ones to ever think of this. I mean, look, technically all water on this planet is recycled water. The water we drink today is the same water the dinosaurs drank. So, it's just like it's a whole nuanced thing there. But for South by Southwest, we wanted to have some fun. So we took a bunch of recycled water from another one of our projects down in Southern California, and we made this super high-end whiskey that we unveiled on stage at South by Southwest. And unbeknownst to us, there was a reporter filming the whole session from CBS in the audience. So the whole thing was captured, but now we are also whiskey makers. So beer makers, whiskey makers, and stay tuned because we got some other crazy stuff in the works, which may be ready by New York City Climate Week in a few short months.
I'm feeling tequila.
We love the
Wink
cliffhangers
twice
here
if
on
it's
Let's
tequila.
Talk More Action. You have to come back. Can you drop the story when we get the exclusive?
Yeah, but we're going to cut you off this time, Joel.
Sounds like I got to come to New York and try whatever you're making up. What, Aaron, do you come up with these marketing campaigns yourself, or do you have like a team behind you? I mean, this is like, Cleantech often is so, in the fringes. It's such a like niche thing that is important, but nobody cares about, but everybody loves beer and whiskey and whatever's coming next.
Look, we have a crazy team. We all work together to execute on these ideas. My background on paper doesn't make any sense doing what I do. When I was little, I wanted to be a veterinarian, and I read a bunch of books by Jane Goodall and Steve Irwin, and that was my thing. Then in high school, I wanted to become a chef. Then I got really into history and politics and thought I was going to go into politics. Then I did a weird detour and worked in nightlife. So I was a club promoter, and that's probably where some of this stuff comes from. Then I wanted to become a rabbi, and then my rabbi talked me out of becoming a rabbi. Then I went and worked in politics, and then now I'm a glorified plumber with Epic Cleantec. So, again, it doesn't really make a lot of sense, but I've always thrown parties since I was in high school, getting into a lot of trouble. It's always been a thing we do, but all those skills are the same, which is we're trying to make stuff exciting. You want to hype this stuff up. And honestly, I think me and my co-founders were not trained in water and wastewater. I approach this whole industry, and I'm very aware of how it looks to outsiders who are not trained in civil and environmental engineering. So, yeah, we like to think outside of the box, come up with these zany ideas. What Joel didn't mention is that at that same green build, and I have this photo. I'm going to find the photo, but we also had a 6-foot golden toilet at our booth at Greenbuild that was designed to have enough structural integrity for people to sit on it. Joel and the Google team, I think there was 6 of them on the toilet at the same time. So they really put our golden toilet to the test. 3 sitting on the toilet and 3 up on the tank.
I've been restrained in this conversation, but my foray into the world of wastewater reuse is I'm like a little boy with potty talk. I can't get enough of the jokes.
Yeah.
And so you put a giant gold toilet in front of me.
But so again, what you're seizing on,
I had a smile on my face, like you can see right now when I was sitting on
right.
it.
But you're seizing on something really important, which is okay, we work in the water industry, but everyone, not just you, everyone turns into their inner middle schooler when they start talking about toilets and poop and all the other topics. And so a lot of companies kind of shy away from it, try to have this sort of more polished appearance. It's all about, we're trying to save the world with water. That's all good. That's all important. But we were well, if people are want to have fun, we're really going to lean into it.
You got to hit it on. Totally.
We found a lot of success. I mean, our LinkedIn was just full of little poop emojis and toilet emojis, and it worked.
I would say we saw that in Santa Monica over time. We kind of started trying to be a little too serious, and then you're meeting with the same folks from the county or the state division of drinking water enough. You're just guys, we're talking about poop. All right, let's just say it, and it kind of just demystifies it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think literally right behind me, I have patent art of a toilet lid, and we have a bunch of toilet-themed patent art behind me. So,
it's good stuff.
We lean in very heavily into that, not just because it's fun, which it is, and in fact, the most active Slack channel at Epic Cleantech is called Potty Humor, where we share some of these ideas.
You have to get me.
But we do it because it's effective. Channel. You hook people in, and then you can have the serious conversations after.
Totally. Yep. Well, Aaron, it's been a pleasure. I think we got to wrap up here. I had way more questions. Like many other guests, like Owen said, we'll have to have you back because it sounds like you got big stuff coming and we want to continue learning what the progress of the company. But we end all shows the same way we start, which is with the same question. Climate, sustainability. Sometimes we get caught up in negativity and the pessimism of the news. So what gives you hope for the future?
What gives me hope is that I used to run the internship program for my last job. So I ran marketing and business development for a big engineering firm, and I ran the internship program. So I would vet every single application that would come in, hundreds and hundreds of applications. And the one recurring theme in every single application was, I want to work for you because you all prioritize sustainability, and I want to do work that is important and helps to move the world in a better direction. So that means all these engineers, sustainability, which wasn't necessarily a big word decades ago in the industry, is now what every single one of them wants to do. And that gives me hope because sort of the next wave of people who are going to be sitting in our seats, this is just something that's kind of in them. This is in their blood. This is what they've been trained to do and what they're sort of studying and getting excited about. So it's not to say there aren't a lot of challenges in front of us, but I think there is a groundswell of new smart people coming up into the industry that are going to take this increasingly from this is a nice thing to do to it's a must do. And by the way, we got a lot of smart people who are going to execute on that. So that's what gives me hope.
Awesome stuff. Aaron, I told Owen before the show, I said, you're going to love this guy. He's the kind of entrepreneur that we love to celebrate. You've said a bunch of sound bites here we love. So thanks for joining. Keep up the good work. I've always been an admirer of this company, and I'm glad you were able to get on the show. It's really a pleasure.
Yeah, of course.
Tell the world, how do we find you? All this cool marketing stuff you do. Is there social media? Is there get to the website? What's the best way to follow Aaron and everything you're working on?
Yeah, well, obviously, it's our website, epiccleantech.com. By the way, it's TEC. There's no H on the end, so a lot of people confuse that. A lot of people think we're a cleaning company. We're not. So I get weird voicemails every once in a while. But Epic Cleantech, we're on the internet, Instagram, Twitter, all the fun social stuff.
Awesome. Well, Aaron, thank you. Thank you, Owen. Thank you, everyone, for joining. You can find Owen and I on LinkedIn, usually actively antagonizing the more talk, more complaining sustainability crowd. You can find this podcast and more great content at lesstalkmoreaction.com. If you like the podcast, please subscribe, like, and share with your friends. And until next time, we encourage you to ask yourself, what are you doing to take action to make the world a better place?
And